The trading post on Kepler Station buzzed with the usual mixture of alien languages and mechanical hums. Marcus Chen adjusted his worn leather jacket and stepped through the airlock, immediately drawing stares from the various species conducting business in the central hub. 3 years of deep space trading had taught him that humans were still considered mythical by most of the galaxy's inhabitants. A blue-skinned Viridian merchant dropped his plasma cutter when he spotted Marcus walking past. The tool clattered to the deck plating, sending sparks across the floor. Other aliens began whispering in their native tongues, pointing at the human with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright fear. Marcus had grown accustomed to this reaction. According to Galactic records, humans had vanished from known space over 2 centuries ago after a devastating war with an unknown enemy. Most species believed they were extinct, while others thought they were nothing more than legends told by elderly traders who claimed to have met them in distant sectors. The reality was far more complex. Humanity had indeed suffered a catastrophic defeat, but instead of extinction, they had scattered to the far reaches of unexplored space. Small pockets of human settlements existed on remote worlds, hidden from the major galactic powers and slowly rebuilding their strength. Marcus approached the information kiosk where a 4-armed Zelkarian clerk was processing shipping manifests. The alien's compound eyes fixed on him with obvious nervousness. "I need passage to the Arcturus sector," Marcus said, sliding a credit chip across the counter. The clerk's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation. You are really one of them? A human?" "Last time I checked," Marcus replied with a slight smile. "The passage?" Before the clerk could respond, a commotion erupted near the station's main docking bay. Armed security forces were surrounding a sleek black ship that had just arrived. The vessel's design was unlike anything Marcus had seen before, with organic curves that seemed to pulse with an inner light. A group of tall, elegant figures emerged from the ship, escorted by the security team. They moved with a fluid grace that commanded attention, their pale skin seeming to glow under the station's artificial lighting. At their center walked a female figure who radiated authority and power. "Zephyrian royalty," the clerk whispered, his voice trembling. "That is Queen Lirelai herself. She rules over 12 star systems and commands the most advanced fleet in this quadrant of the galaxy." Marcus watched as the Queen and her entourage moved through the trading post. Other aliens immediately bowed or stepped aside, showing a level of respect and fear that spoke to her reputation. The Queen's silver hair flowed like liquid metal, and her violet eyes seemed to see everything around her. As she passed near the information kiosk, her gaze fell upon Marcus. For a moment, time seemed frozen as their eyes met. The Queen's expression shifted from casual observation to intense scrutiny, then to something that looked like recognition. She stopped walking, causing her entire entourage to halt behind her. The security forces tensed, hands moving toward their weapons as they scanned for potential threats. "You," the Queen said, her voice carrying clearly across the suddenly quiet trading post. "Step forward." Marcus felt every alien eye in the vicinity focus on him. He could hear the nervous chittering and clicking of various species as they witnessed what might be a historic moment. Slowly, he walked toward the Queen, noting how her guards shifted to defensive positions. Queen Lirelai studied him with an intensity that made Marcus feel like a specimen under a microscope. She circled around him once, her violet eyes taking in every detail of his appearance. When she spoke again, her voice carried a note of wonder. "The bone structure, the muscle density, the way you carry yourself," she murmured. "It cannot be a coincidence." "Your Majesty," one of her advisors interjected, "surely you cannot believe the old stories. Humans are extinct. The records clearly show—" The Queen raised a hand, silencing her advisor immediately. She continued to examine Marcus, occasionally tilting her head as if trying to solve a complex puzzle. "Tell me your name," she commanded. "Marcus Chen," he replied, maintaining steady eye contact despite the surreal nature of the situation. "And your species?" "Human." A collective gasp rose from the assembled aliens. Several of the smaller species immediately began backing away, while others pulled out recording devices to capture what they believed might be the most significant moment in recent galactic history. Queen Lirelai's expression changed again, this time to something approaching awe. She took a step closer to Marcus, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "So the rumors were true. You are the legendary human," she gasped in amazement. The trading post erupted into chaos. News of a confirmed human sighting spread through the station's communication networks within minutes. Merchants abandoned their stalls, security forces called for backup, and the station administrator issued an emergency lockdown order. Through it all, Marcus stood calmly before the alien queen, unsure of what had just been set in motion but knowing that his quiet life as an anonymous trader had just come to an end. Queen Lyrelay gestured to her guards, who immediately formed a protective circle around both her and Marcus. "You will come with me," she said, though it sounded more like a request than a command. "There are things we must discuss, legends that need clarification and truths that have been hidden for far too long." Marcus glanced around at the chaos surrounding them, then back at the queen. "I don't suppose I have much choice in the matter." "You always have a choice," she replied, surprising him. "But I suspect you are as curious about this encounter as I am. Your people were supposed to be extinct, yet here you stand. My people have stories about humans that date back centuries, tales that speak of incredible abilities and unmatched determination. I would very much like to know which of these stories are true." As they walked toward her ship, Marcus couldn't help but wonder what he had gotten himself into. The queen's words suggested she knew more about humanity than most of the galaxy, and her reaction indicated that humans held a special significance in her culture's mythology. The black ship's airlock sealed behind them, cutting off the noise from the trading post. Whatever happened next, Marcus realized, would likely change everything he thought he knew about humanity's place in the galaxy. The interior of Queen Lyrelay's ship defied Marcus's expectations. Instead of the cold metal corridors he anticipated, he found himself walking through spaces that seemed alive. The walls pulsed with a soft bioluminescent glow, and the floor felt warm beneath his feet. Organic-looking conduits ran along the ceiling, carrying what appeared to be glowing fluid rather than electrical current. "Impressive, is it not?" the queen said, noticing his amazement. "Zephyrian biotechnology has advanced considerably since the last recorded human contact. We grow our ships rather than build them." They passed through several chambers, each more extraordinary than the last. Marcus saw crew members working at stations that resembled giant flowers, their surfaces responding to touch with ripples of light. The ship's bridge, when they finally reached it, looked more like a garden than a command center. Queen Lyrelay dismissed her guards and advisors with a gesture, leaving her alone with Marcus on the bridge. She moved to what appeared to be the captain's chair, though it looked more like a throne made of crystallized light. "Please sit," she said, indicating a chair that grew from the floor at her command. "We have much to discuss, and I suspect you have many questions." Marcus settled into the surprisingly comfortable seat, starting with why you recognized me so quickly. "Most aliens have never seen a human before." The queen's violet eyes seemed to glow brighter as she leaned forward. "Because my people have been waiting for your return for over 200 years. We have detailed records of human physiology, behavior patterns, and capabilities. What we did not know was whether any of your species had survived the Great Catastrophe." "The Great Catastrophe?" "The war that drove humanity from known space. My grandmother witnessed it firsthand when she was young. She told me stories that seemed impossible. Tales of human warriors who could fight for days without rest, who could survive in environments that would kill other species, and who possessed an unbreakable will to protect their own." Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "I think your grandmother may have exaggerated. We're not superhuman." Queen Lyrelay stood and walked to a wall that suddenly became transparent, revealing the vast expanse of space beyond. "Are you not?" "Tell me, Marcus Chen, how long can you function without sleep?" "Depends on the situation. In an emergency, maybe 3 or 4 days. A Zephyrian would collapse after 30 hours. And how much punishment can your body endure before it fails completely?" Marcus frowned. "I don't really think about it that way." "Of course you do not. It is simply normal for you." The queen touched the wall and images began to appear on its surface. "These are recordings from the archive vaults on my homeworld. They show the last great battle where humans and Zephyrians fought side by side against the Void Seekers. The images were grainy but clear enough to show the chaos of space combat. Marcus watched human ships, smaller and less advanced than their alien allies, darting between massive enemy vessels with impossible agility. But what caught his attention were the ground combat scenes. Human soldiers were fighting alongside Zephyrian warriors against creatures that looked like living shadows. While the aliens fell back under the enemy's assault, the humans held their ground. Marcus watched in amazement as human fighters continued to battle even after sustaining injuries that should have been incapacitating. "This cannot be real," he said quietly. "Every frame is documented and verified." Watch this section carefully. The image focused on a human soldier who had been separated from his unit. He was surrounded by 6 Void Seekers, creatures twice his size with razor-sharp claws. The soldier was bleeding from multiple wounds. His armor was damaged and his weapon had been destroyed. Any rational being would have surrendered or fled. Instead, the human attacked. Marcus watched in stunned silence as the soldier used improvised weapons, environmental hazards, and sheer determination to not only survive but eliminate all 6 enemies. When reinforcements finally arrived, they found the human still standing, though barely conscious from blood loss. The medical records show he had suffered injuries that would have killed 3 Zephyrians, the Queen said softly. Yet he recovered completely within 2 weeks and returned to active duty. But that's just one soldier. You can't judge an entire species by... There are thousands of similar recordings. The Queen gestured, and more images flashed across the wall. Humans performing impossible rescues, surviving in the vacuum of space for minutes without protection, fighting against overwhelming odds and somehow prevailing. My people began to believe that humans were not just another species, but something extraordinary. Marcus struggled to process what he was seeing. These weren't the humans he knew from the scattered colonies. These were warriors who seemed to operate beyond normal biological limitations. "What happened to them?" he asked. The Queen's expression grew somber. "The Void Seekers adapted. They began targeting human worlds specifically, recognizing that your species posed the greatest threat to their expansion. One by one, human colonies fell. The survivors scattered to the far reaches of space, and gradually, most of the galaxy forgot they ever existed." She returned to her throne-like chair and fixed Marcus with an intense stare. "But we did not forget. Zephyrian culture has kept the memory of human courage alive through songs, stories, and historical records. We have been hoping that someday, somehow, humans would return to help us face the threats that still lurk in the dark corners of the galaxy. And now you think I'm that return? I think you are the beginning of it." The Queen leaned forward again. "Tell me, Marcus, what do you know about the current state of human civilization?" Marcus hesitated. The locations of human settlements were closely guarded secrets, shared only among trusted traders who served as links between the scattered communities. But something about the Queen's sincerity made him want to trust her. "There are more of us than the galaxy realizes," he said carefully. "Small colonies, hidden settlements, communities that have learned to survive without drawing attention. How many?" "I honestly don't know the exact numbers. Maybe a few million spread across dozens of worlds." The Queen's eyes widened. "Millions? We had hoped for thousands at best. We've been rebuilding slowly, carefully. Most humans prefer to stay hidden rather than risk another war. And what of their capabilities? Are they still as formidable as their ancestors?" Marcus thought about the humans he knew, the miners on Kepler 7 who worked in conditions that would hospitalize other species, the mechanics on New Terra who could repair impossible machinery through intuition and stubbornness, the farmers on Haven who had turned a barren world into a garden through sheer determination. "We adapt," he said simply. "It's what we do." Queen Lorelei smiled for the first time since their conversation began. "Yes, that is exactly what the legends say. Humans do not just survive, they adapt and overcome." She stood again, her posture becoming more formal. "Marcus Chen, I have a proposition for you." Marcus studied the alien Queen's expression, trying to read the intentions behind her violet eyes. In his years of trading across the galaxy, he had learned to be cautious of propositions from powerful beings. "They rarely ended well for humans. What kind of proposition?" he asked. Queen Lorelei gestured, and the ship's walls began displaying star charts and tactical displays. 3 months ago, our deep space monitoring stations detected familiar energy signatures on the edge of Zephyrian space. The same signatures that preceded the Void Seeker attacks 2 centuries ago. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. "They're returning?" "We believe so. But this time they are being more careful, more methodical. Instead of the massive fleets that announced their presence before, we are seeing small reconnaissance groups, probing our defenses, testing our responses." The star charts zoomed in on specific sectors, showing patrol routes and defensive positions. Marcus could see that the Zephyrian fleet, while impressive, was spread thin across their territory. Our military analysts estimate we have perhaps 6 months before they launch a full-scale invasion, the Queen continued. We have spent the last 2 centuries preparing for their return, but our simulations consistently show the same result. Without allies who possess the tactical flexibility and adaptive capabilities that humans demonstrated in the previous war, we will eventually fall. So you want me to contact the human settlements and ask them to join your fight? More than that. The Queen's expression intensified. I want you to help me prove to both our species that an alliance is not only possible, but necessary for survival. Marcus leaned back in his chair. You're talking about exposing hidden human colonies to galactic attention. That goes against everything we've learned about staying safe. Safety is an illusion when faced with existential threats. The Void Seekers will eventually find your hidden worlds, whether they are exposed or not. The question is whether humanity will face them alone or with allies. The tactical displays shifted to show battle projections. Marcus watched simulated fleets clash in space with various scenarios playing out. In every case where human forces fought alongside Zephyrian ships, the combined fleets performed significantly better than either species alone. These are just computer models, Marcus pointed out. Based on historical data from the last war, the synergy between human adaptability and Zephyrian technology was remarkable. Our ships provided the advanced weaponry and defensive systems, while human tactical thinking provided the unpredictable strategies that the Void Seekers could not counter. Marcus stood and walked to the transparent wall, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there were human families who had built new lives in peaceful obscurity. The idea of dragging them into another galactic war felt like a betrayal of everything their ancestors had sacrificed to achieve. Even if I wanted to help, he said, I'm just a trader. I don't have the authority to speak for humanity. But you do have connections. You travel between human settlements carrying news and maintaining communication links. You could arrange meetings, facilitate discussions, help build trust between our species. Queen Lyrily joined him at the wall. I am not asking you to decide for your people. I am asking you to give them the opportunity to make an informed choice. And what would you offer in return? What would make human leaders willing to risk exposure and potential war? The Queen smiled, and for the first time Marcus saw genuine warmth in her expression. Technology, resources, and most importantly, a place in the galactic community. Humans would no longer need to hide or live as scattered refugees. You would have star systems to call your own, trade relationships with dozens of species, and the protection of the Zephyrian fleet. Assuming we survive the war. Assuming we all survive. Because without human involvement, I fear none of us will. Marcus considered her words. The human settlements he knew were thriving in their own small ways, but they were limited by their isolation. Advanced medical technology, manufacturing capabilities, and scientific research all suffered when populations remained small and scattered. There's another problem, he said. Most humans I know have never heard of Zephyrians. They might not trust an alien alliance, especially one that involves fighting in someone else's war. Which is why I propose a demonstration. There is a small crisis occurring in the Meridian sector that would allow our forces to work together on a limited scale. A Void Seeker advanced scout has been attacking civilian vessels near the trade routes. Both human and Zephyrian ships have been targeted. The wall display shifted to show the Meridian sector. Marcus could see the attack patterns and the locations where ships had been destroyed or captured. You want to set up a joint mission to deal with this scout ship? Exactly. A small operation that would allow both our species to observe each other in action, build trust, and demonstrate the effectiveness of cooperation. If successful, it would provide evidence that could convince leaders on both sides to consider a larger alliance. Marcus studied the tactical situation. The Void Seeker ship was fast and heavily armed, but it was operating alone. A coordinated attack by human and Zephyrian forces might indeed be successful, assuming they could work together effectively. How many humans would you need for this demonstration? A single ship and crew would be sufficient, enough to showcase human tactical capabilities without requiring a major commitment from your settlements. And if the mission fails, if humans and Zephyrians prove incompatible as allies, Queen Lyrily's expression grew serious. Then we will all face the coming darkness separately, and hope that isolation provides better protection than unity. Marcus realized he was standing at a crossroads that could determine the future of human civilization. The safe choice would be to decline the Queen's proposition, return to his trading routes, and hope that the hidden human settlements remained undetected. But safety had never been humanity's defining characteristic. "I know a captain who might be interested," he said slowly. "Sarah Mitchell commands a modified corvette called the Resilience. She operates in the outer sectors and has a crew experienced in dangerous situations. Would she be willing to meet with me? If I asked her to, yes. But she'll want to know exactly what she's getting into. As she should. I propose we arrange a meeting at a neutral location where she can evaluate the proposal for herself. No commitments, no obligations, simply an exchange of information." Marcus nodded slowly. "I can set that up. But I want something in return. Name it. Full disclosure about Zephyrian capabilities and intentions. No secrets, no hidden agendas. If we're going to trust each other, it has to be complete trust." Queen Lyrelei extended her hand in a gesture that seemed surprisingly human. "Agreed. Complete transparency between our species starting now." Marcus shook her hand, noting that her skin felt warm and somehow electric. "Then let's see if humans and Zephyrians can indeed become allies." As they discussed the logistics of arranging the meeting, neither of them noticed the small sensor probe that had been tracking the Queen's ship since it left Kepler Station. Deep in space, the probe transmitted its data to a much larger vessel, one whose hull seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The Void Seekers had been monitoring Zephyrian communications for months, waiting for exactly this kind of opportunity. The return of humans to galactic politics was an unexpected development, but not necessarily an unwelcome one. It would provide them with excellent intelligence about human capabilities and locations. The shadow ship changed course, setting an intercept trajectory for the Meridian sector. The Meridian Nebula served as a perfect meeting point for clandestine encounters. Its dense gas clouds and electromagnetic interference made it nearly impossible for outside observers to monitor what happened within its boundaries. Marcus floated in his personal shuttle, watching as two very different ships approached through the colorful mists. The Resilience emerged first, its scarred hull telling the story of countless encounters with pirates, asteroids, and hostile environments. Captain Sarah Mitchell had earned her reputation through 15 years of surviving in the galaxy's most dangerous regions. Her ship looked like it had been cobbled together from spare parts, but Marcus knew its unconventional appearance hid sophisticated modifications. Queen Lyrelei's bioship appeared moments later, its organic curves seeming out of place among the nebula's geometric patterns. The contrast between the two vessels perfectly illustrated the differences between human and Zephyrian approaches to technology. "This better be worth interrupting my cargo run." "Marcus," Sarah's voice crackled over the comm system. "I've got 60 tons of medical supplies that need to reach the colonies in the frontier rim. Trust me." "Sarah, this could change everything for humanity." The three ships formed a loose triangle in the nebula's heart, their hulls reflecting the strange light patterns created by excited gas particles. Marcus transmitted the agreed-upon security codes, and the other two captains confirmed they were ready to proceed. Queen Lyrelei's voice joined the conversation, her translator rendering her words in accented but clear standard. "Captain Mitchell, I am honored to meet you. Marcus has told me much about your reputation. He's told me some interesting things about you too, Your Majesty, though I have to admit, finding out that alien royalty knows about human capabilities was a bit of a shock." "Perhaps we should dock our ships so we can speak face to face," the Queen suggested. "There are things that are better discussed in person." Sarah's laugh carried a hint of skepticism. "With respect, I've learned to be careful about boarding alien vessels. How about we use my ship? It's not as elegant as yours, but it's neutral ground." Marcus smiled. Sarah's caution was exactly why he had chosen her for this meeting. She was fearless in combat but paranoid about politics, a combination that had kept her alive in situations that destroyed other captains. An hour later, they were seated around the Resilience's cramped conference table. Sarah had insisted on keeping her first officer and chief engineer present, while Queen Lyrelei had brought a single advisor. The space felt crowded, but the informal atmosphere seemed to put everyone at ease. "Let me get straight to the point," Sarah said, placing a datapad on the table. "Marcus tells me you want humans to come out of hiding to fight in another galactic war. Before I even consider that idea, I need to know what we're really facing." Queen Lyrelei nodded approvingly. "Direct questions deserve direct answers. The Void Seekers are not merely another aggressive species. They are something far more dangerous, A force that consumes entire civilizations and converts their resources into more ships, more weapons, more soldiers. She activated a holographic projector that created a three-dimensional display above the table. They appeared in our galaxy approximately 400 years ago, emerging from what we now know was a failed dimensional experiment by an extinct species. They do not conquer worlds in the traditional sense. They strip them of all useful materials and biomass, leaving behind empty husks. The hologram showed the progression of Void Seeker expansion, with star systems going dark one by one as the shadowy fleet advanced. The scale of destruction was staggering. "How many ships are we talking about?" asked Tom Bradley, Sarah's chief engineer. "Intelligence estimates suggest they currently possess between 8 and 12,000 vessels of various sizes. However, they have the ability to construct new ships using materials harvested from conquered worlds so that number grows constantly." Sarah leaned back in her chair. "And you think a few million scattered humans can make a difference against that kind of force?" "I think human tactical innovation combined with Zephyrian technology can create strategies that the Void Seekers cannot predict or counter. They are highly intelligent but also rigidly logical. They struggle to adapt when faced with seemingly irrational decisions." "Irrational decisions are definitely a human specialty," muttered Jake Morrison, Sarah's first officer. Queen Lorelei smiled at the comment. "Indeed, from studying historical records of the previous war, I have learned that humans possess a unique combination of logical analysis and intuitive leaps that creates unpredictable tactical patterns. Your species seems to thrive on making plans that should not work, then implementing them with such determination that they succeed despite impossible odds." "That's an interesting way to describe stubbornness," Sarah said dryly. "Call it what you will, but it was devastatingly effective against Void Seeker forces. They could not develop countermeasures for tactics that even human allies found confusing." The Queen touched her projector, and the display changed to show battle formations from the ancient war. "Watch this engagement carefully." The human admiral chose to divide his fleet into seemingly random groups and attack from 17 different directions simultaneously. By conventional military doctrine, it was suicide. The Void Seekers assumed it was a feint covering the real attack and concentrated their defenses in the wrong location. The holographic battle played out in miniature, showing human ships darting through gaps in the enemy formation that should not have existed. The Void Seeker response was confused and ineffective, allowing the human fleet to destroy several major vessels before withdrawing. The enemy spent 3 months analyzing that battle. The Queen continued. They developed 18 different tactical responses to prevent similar attacks. Then the humans did something completely different that made all those preparations useless. Tom Bradley studied the display with professional interest. Their ships were slower and less heavily armed than the enemy vessels. How did they survive long enough to execute these tactics? Through modifications that pushed their technology beyond safe operational limits. Human engineers seemed to view manufacturer specifications as suggestions rather than absolute boundaries. Sarah and her crew exchanged knowing looks. Every human ship in the outer sectors operated with similar modifications. It was a matter of survival when facing pirates, natural disasters, and mechanical failures light years from the nearest repair facility. "All right," Sarah said. "Assuming I believe your history lessons, what exactly are you proposing?" "I'm not going to commit my people to a war based on theoretical synergies in ancient battles. A test mission. There is currently a Void Seeker Advanced Scout operating in this sector, attacking both human and Zephyrian vessels. I propose we coordinate our efforts to eliminate this threat while simultaneously evaluating our compatibility as allies." Queen Lorelei modified the display to show recent attack patterns in the surrounding systems. The enemy ship had destroyed 6 vessels in the past month, always striking quickly and disappearing before reinforcements could arrive. "Lone scout ships are how the Void Seekers gather intelligence about potential targets," she explained. "If we can capture or destroy this one, we gain valuable information while preventing it from reporting back to the main fleet." Sarah studied the tactical situation for several minutes. The attack patterns suggest they're using some kind of advanced sensor system to detect ships before the ships detect them. That's a significant advantage, which is why we need human creativity to develop a strategy that does not rely on conventional sensor technology. You want us to think outside the box. I want you to ignore the box entirely. Sarah looked at her officers. reading their expressions. Tom was intrigued by the technical challenge while Jake seemed skeptical, but willing to consider the possibilities. "If we agree to this mission," Sarah said slowly, "what guarantees do we have? How do I know this isn't an elaborate trap designed to locate human settlements?" Queen Lyreley met her gaze steadily. "You have my word as ruler of the Zephyrian Consortium. But more than that, you have logical necessity. If I wanted to locate human settlements, there are far simpler methods than staging an elaborate deception involving fictional enemies." "The Void Seekers are fictional?" "No, they are very real. I am saying that if my intentions were hostile, I would not need to invent them as justification." Marcus had remained quiet during most of the discussion, but now he leaned forward. "Sarah, I've been thinking about this for days. The Queen is right about one thing. Hiding forever isn't a long-term solution. Eventually something is going to find the human colonies. Wouldn't it be better to face that threat with allies than alone?" Sarah considered his words while studying the holographic display. The Void Seeker attack pattern showed a methodical intelligence that was somehow more disturbing than random violence would have been. "All right," she said finally. "One mission. We work together to eliminate this scout ship, and then we evaluate the results. No commitments beyond that." Queen Lyreley smiled with obvious relief. "That is all I ask. The opportunity to prove that our species can accomplish together what neither could achieve alone." The modified cargo hauler Defiant Trader drifted silently through the asteroid field. Its engines powered down and its hull configured to mimic a derelict vessel. Inside the cramped bridge, Captain Sarah Mitchell monitored the passive sensors while maintaining radio silence. 3 days of careful planning had led to this moment. "Thermal signature consistent with a ship that's been dead for at least a week," reported Tom Bradley from his engineering station. "External hull damage looks authentic from this distance." "It better look authentic," Sarah muttered. "I spent 6 hours with a plasma cutter making those scorch marks." The plan was elegantly simple in its deception. The Void Seeker Scout had been hunting active ships, using their energy signatures to locate and destroy targets. But every predator had patterns, and this one showed a particular interest in investigating disabled vessels that might contain valuable intelligence or salvageable technology. Queen Lyreley's bioship was hidden deeper in the asteroid field, its organic hull naturally camouflaged among the space rocks. The Zephyrian vessel would remain concealed until the trap was sprung, providing a technological surprise that the enemy hopefully hadn't encountered before. Marcus floated in his personal shuttle near the field's edge, serving as an early warning system and communications relay between the two larger ships. His role was to coordinate the attack timing while appearing to be just another piece of space debris. "Contact," Jake Morrison whispered from the sensor station. "Unknown vessel approaching from bearing 27 Mark IV. Configuration matches the profile from previous attacks." Through the bridge's main viewer, Sarah could see a dark shape emerging from behind a large asteroid. The Void Seeker scout ship looked like someone had taken a conventional vessel and removed everything unnecessary, leaving behind only weapons, engines, and armor. Its hull seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, creating an unsettling effect against the starfield. "Range 4,000 kilometers and closing," Jake reported. "They're scanning us with some kind of exotic sensor array." Sarah forced herself to remain calm as the enemy ship approached. The success of their plan depended on her crew appearing to be helpless survivors rather than a hidden threat. "Remember, we're supposed to be dead in space. No active emissions, no sudden movements." The Void Seeker vessel continued its approach, occasionally adjusting course to avoid larger asteroids. Its movements were precise and mechanical, lacking the organic unpredictability that characterized most biological species' flying patterns. 2,000 kilometers, Jake whispered. "They're launching some kind of probe." A small object detached from the enemy ship and began moving toward the Defiant Trader. Sarah watched it approach through the viewer, noting its unusual design. The probe moved with deliberate purpose, scanning the human vessel with increasing intensity. "Tom, are you ready with the surprise package?" "All systems standing by," the engineer confirmed. "The moment they try to board us, I can flood their probe with feedback that should disable their sensors long enough for us to spring the trap." The probe reached the Defiant Trader's hull and began attaching itself to the airlock. Sarah could hear the mechanical sounds of the device trying to override her ship's security systems. "That's our cue. Marcus, initiate Phase 2. In his shuttle, Marcus activated a series of previously placed sensor buoys throughout the asteroid field. To the Void Seeker ship, it would appear that multiple vessels were suddenly powering up all around them. The enemy's logical response would be to concentrate on the largest threats first. The Void Seeker scout immediately reacted to the new sensor contacts, withdrawing its probe and beginning evasive maneuvers. But instead of fleeing as expected, it launched a spread of missiles at the largest energy signatures. "They're targeting the decoy buoys," Jake reported with satisfaction. "The missiles are tracking perfectly." While the enemy focused on destroying phantom targets, Queen Lyrali's bioship emerged from its hiding place among the asteroids. The organic vessel moved with fluid grace, its living hull adapting to optimize performance as it accelerated toward the distracted scout ship. "Zephyrian vessel is in attack position," Marcus reported over the comm system. "Their weapons are charging." But the Void Seeker scout proved more adaptable than they had anticipated. Instead of continuing to pursue the decoy targets, it suddenly changed course and launched a direct attack on the bioship. Streams of dark energy lanced across space, striking the Zephyrian vessel's hull and causing it to shudder under the impact. "The Queen's ship is taking damage," Marcus reported urgently. "Their biohull is regenerating, but slowly." Sarah made a split-second decision that exemplified human tactical thinking. Instead of following the carefully planned attack sequence, she powered up the Defiant Trader's engines and launched her ship directly at the enemy scout. "Sarah, what are you doing?" Tom asked in alarm. "That's not the plan." "Plans change." Jake armed the torpedo tubes. "Tom, transfer all available power to forward shields." The modified cargo hauler accelerated toward the Void Seeker ship at maximum velocity. Sarah knew her vessel was outgunned and outmaneuvered, but she also knew that sometimes the most effective tactic was the one nobody expected. The enemy scout turned its attention to this new threat, firing streams of dark energy that Sarah dodged through a combination of skill and luck. The Defiant Trader's shields flared under the impacts, but held long enough for her to close the distance. "Torpedo tubes loaded and ready," Jake reported. "Wait for it," Sarah said, watching the range indicators decrease. "Wait for it." At point-blank range, she fired both torpedoes directly into the enemy ship's main weapons array. The explosions disabled their primary armament but also triggered a massive feedback surge that overloaded the Defiant Trader's shield generators. "Shields down," Tom reported. "We're sitting ducks." The Void Seeker scout prepared to finish off the human ship with its secondary weapons, but Queen Lyrali had used the distraction to position her bioship for a killing shot. Organic weapons that resembled living lightning struck the enemy vessel's engines, disabling its propulsion and leaving it drifting helplessly. "Target neutralized," the Queen's voice came over the comm system. "Both their weapons and engines are offline." Sarah slumped back in her command chair, adrenaline slowly fading from her system. "Status report, Tom. Main shields are fried and we've got minor hull breaches on decks 3 and 4, but life support is stable and the engines are intact. Jake, scan that enemy ship. I want to know if there's anything left alive over there." The sensor officer worked at his console for several minutes before reporting his findings. "The ship appears to be completely automated. No life signs, no crew quarters, just mechanical systems and computer cores." Queen Lyrali's bioship approached the disabled scout vessel cautiously. "We are detecting unusual energy patterns from their computer systems. They appear to be attempting some kind of data transmission. Can you block it?" Sarah asked, already done. "Our bioelectromagnetic fields are interfering with their communications array." Marcus maneuvered his shuttle closer to both ships. "So what now? Do we board them and try to gather intelligence?" Before anyone could answer, the Void Seeker scout ship began to glow with an ominous internal light. Warning signals filled the comm channels as both the human and Zephyrian vessels detected rapidly increasing energy levels. "It's going to self-destruct," Tom shouted. "All ships, emergency retreat." The 3 vessels scattered in different directions as the enemy scout ship exploded in a brilliant flash that temporarily overwhelmed their sensors. When the light faded, nothing remained but expanding debris and residual radiation. "Well," Sarah said after a moment of silence, "that was educational." "Indeed," Queen Lyrali agreed, "though perhaps not in the way we had hoped. The self-destruct mechanism suggests they were more concerned about protecting information than completing their mission." Marcus reviewed the sensor data from the battle. "We learned something important, though. Human and Zephyrian tactics do complement each other. Your ship provided the firepower, while Sarah's unpredictable attack created the opening you needed. The question is whether our respective governments will see it that way, the Queen replied. This was a successful engagement, but it was also costly. Both our ships sustained damage and we gained no intelligence about enemy capabilities. Sarah studied the debris field through her main viewer. Maybe we gained more than we think. That scout ship was definitely gathering information about this sector. By destroying it, we prevented that intelligence from reaching the main Voidseeker fleet. A valid point. However, there will likely be more scouts, and eventually our enemies will realize this one failed to report. Then we better make sure we're ready for them when they come looking. The three captains spent the next hour sharing technical data and tactical observations from the engagement. Despite the challenges they had faced, there was a growing sense that human and Zephyrian forces could indeed work together effectively, but none of them realized that the Voidseeker Scout's final transmission had been partially successful. Deep in space, a much larger vessel had received fragments of the intercepted communications, enough to confirm that humans still existed and were now actively cooperating with their old allies. The emergency session of the Zephyrian High Council convened in the crystalline chambers beneath the capital city of Luminara. Queen Lyra Lai stood before the assembled representatives of 12 star systems, her violet eyes reflecting the chamber's bioluminescent lighting. The weight of impending war pressed down on everyone present. The intelligence is confirmed, she announced to the gathered officials. Voidseeker advance forces are massing in the Outer Rim, and their main fleet has begun moving toward our territories. We estimate 4 months before they reach our outer defense perimeters. Councillor Vexhai, an elderly Zephyrian with silver-streaked skin, leaned forward in his organic throne. And what of this human alliance you have been pursuing, Your Majesty? Do we have their commitment to stand with us? The situation is complex, Lyra replied. Captain Mitchell has returned to human space to present our proposal to their leadership council. The response has been mixed. The holographic display at the chamber's center activated, showing a recorded message from Sarah Mitchell. The human captain appeared tired but determined as she addressed the Zephyrian Council. The Colonial Assembly has voted, Sarah's image announced. 7 settlements have agreed to join the alliance and contribute ships to the defense effort. 3 have voted to remain neutral, and 2 have decided to evacuate deeper into unexplored space rather than risk exposure. Councillor Miraleth, a younger representative known for her tactical expertise, interrupted the recording. Only 7 settlements? Our intelligence suggested there were at least 15 human colonies in that sector alone. Queen Lyrelai paused the message. Captain Mitchell explained that many human leaders remain skeptical about revealing their locations to outsiders, even potential allies. 2 centuries of hiding have created a culture of extreme caution. Understandable but problematic, muttered Councillor Zardan. How many ships are we talking about from these 7 settlements? The recording resumed and Sarah provided the details. The committed settlements can provide approximately 43 vessels of various configurations. Most are modified cargo ships and mining vessels, but they've been heavily armed and upgraded for combat operations. Additionally, the Free Traders Union has voted to contribute another 27 ships. 70 ships, Vexhai calculated aloud. Against an estimated Voidseeker fleet of 10,000 vessels. The mathematics are not encouraging. Queen Lyrelai stepped forward. Counselor, you are thinking in terms of conventional warfare. The human vessels may be small and jury-rigged, but they represent something the Voidseekers have not encountered in 2 centuries, completely unpredictable tactical thinking backed by desperate innovation. She modified the holographic display to show battle projections based on historical data. During the previous war, human forces routinely achieved victory ratios of 20-1 against Voidseeker ships. Their unconventional tactics and refusal to accept impossible odds created opportunities that no computer simulation could predict. Councillor Vexhai remained skeptical. That was 200 years ago, Your Majesty. The current generation of humans has not been tested in major combat. How do we know they retain these legendary capabilities? Before the Queen could respond, the Chamber's communication system activated with an urgent priority signal. Admiral Kethran, commander of the Zephyrian Defense Fleet, appeared on the display with obvious agitation. Your Majesty, we have a situation developing in the Proxima sector. Long-range sensors have detected a Voidseeker battle group, moving directly toward the human settlement at New Haven. The chamber erupted in concerned whispers. New Haven was one of the colonies that had voted to join the Alliance, and it housed nearly 50,000 human civilians. How many enemy ships? Queen Lyrelay demanded. 12 vessels, including 2 heavy cruisers. They will reach New Haven in approximately 18 hours. Counselor Miraleth studied the tactical display. Our nearest fleet elements are 24 hours away. We cannot reach them in time. What about the human ships that were supposed to rendezvous with our forces? Admiral Kethran's expression grew grim. 3 human vessels are currently in the Proxima sector, conducting evacuation operations. They are massively outnumbered and outgunned. Queen Lyrelay felt the weight of command pressing down on her. The alliance with humanity was still fragile, built on limited trust and mutual necessity. If New Haven fell without Zephyrian assistance, it would confirm every human suspicion about alien reliability. Admiral, redirect the Second Fleet to New Haven at maximum velocity. Emergency protocols are authorized. Your Majesty, even with emergency acceleration, we will arrive 6 hours after the enemy force reaches the colony. Then we must trust that the humans can hold out until we arrive. The recording from Captain Mitchell resumed automatically, and her voice filled the chamber with an unexpected message. There's something else the Colonial Assembly wanted me to convey. If the Void Seekers attack any human settlement, regardless of their alliance status, all committed colonies will consider it an act of war against humanity as a whole. The response will be immediate and total. Counselor Zardon looked puzzled. What does she mean by total response? Queen Lyrelay manipulated the display to show intelligence reports that had been classified until now. According to our analysis of human communications, they have been developing contingency plans for exactly this scenario. Every human settlement, even those that voted for neutrality, has been preparing for coordinated military action. How many ships could they field in total? Vexhai asked quietly. Conservative estimates suggest between 200 and 300 vessels, but these numbers may be understated. Human settlements have a tendency to underreport their actual capabilities, even to potential allies. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. A coordinated human response could potentially field a fleet comparable in size to the Zephyrian Navy, though with vessels that were smaller and less technologically advanced. Admiral Kethran's voice interrupted their thoughts. Your Majesty, I'm receiving a transmission from the Proxima sector. It's from the human ships at New Haven. Put it through. The display showed the bridge of a human vessel, with Captain Rodriguez of the mining ship Determination addressing them directly. This is Captain Elena Rodriguez to any Zephyrian forces monitoring this frequency. We have civilian evacuation ships leaving New Haven, but we're not running from the Void Seekers. The image switched to an external view showing 3 human vessels taking defensive positions around the colony. The ships looked tiny compared to the massive space stations and defensive platforms, but they moved with determined purpose. We've analyzed the enemy approach vector and identified a vulnerability in their formation, Rodriguez continued. If we can disable their lead heavy cruiser, it will create a tactical bottleneck that might allow your forces time to arrive. Counselor Miraleth leaned forward with interest. What kind of vulnerability? Their ships are maintaining a tight formation to maximize their combined firepower, but that also means if the lead vessel suffers catastrophic engine failure in the right location, the following ships will have to choose between ramming their own ally or breaking formation to avoid collision. Queen Lyrelay studied the tactical projection. It's an extremely risky strategy. Those 3 ships would have to attack the most heavily defended vessel in the enemy formation. That's exactly what they're planning to do, Admiral Kethran reported grimly. Long-range sensors show the human ships are accelerating directly toward the Void Seeker fleet. They're not even trying to use evasive maneuvers. The chamber watched in fascination and horror as the tactical display showed 3 tiny human ships charging straight at 12 enemy vessels. By every conventional military analysis, it was suicide. They're going to ram the lead cruiser, Counselor Zardon breathed. They're actually going to sacrifice themselves to create an opening for our fleet. But as the human ships closed with their targets, something unexpected happened. Instead of continuing their direct approach, they suddenly scattered in 3 different directions, launching what appeared to be mining charges and industrial equipment at the enemy formation. What are they doing? Vexhai demanded. Queen Lyrelay smiled for the first time since the crisis began. Something that no Void Seeker tactical computer will be able to predict or counter. They're thinking like humans. The improvised weapons, mining charges designed to break apart asteroids, industrial cables meant for ship construction, and various pieces of modified equipment created a cloud of unpredictable hazards around the enemy fleet. The Void Seekers, programmed for efficiency and logical responses, found themselves unable to calculate safe movement vectors through the chaos. While the enemy ships struggled to adapt to this unprecedented situation, the human vessels used the confusion to position themselves for precision strikes against critical systems. It wasn't elegant, it wasn't by the book, and it certainly wasn't what anyone would call proper military tactics. But it was working. Incredible, Admiral Catherine reported. The human ships have disabled the engines on the lead heavy cruiser and damaged 3 escort vessels. The enemy formation is breaking apart. Queen Lirelai turned to address the council with renewed confidence. 6 months after the Battle of New Haven, the combined human-Zephyrian fleet gathered in the Andromeda system for what military historians would later call the most crucial engagement in galactic history. The Voidseeker main force had finally emerged from the dark spaces between stars, bringing with them a fleet of staggering proportions. Marcus Chen stood on the bridge of the newly commissioned Alliance flagship, Harmony, watching the tactical displays with a mixture of awe and determination. The ship itself represented everything the Alliance had achieved. Zephyrian biotechnology seamlessly integrated with human engineering pragmatism, creating a vessel that was both elegant and devastatingly effective. Final fleet count is in, reported Admiral Sarah Mitchell, who had been promoted to overall human fleet commander after her heroic actions at New Haven. 247 human vessels, 112 Zephyrian ships, and 36 allied vessels from species that joined us after news of the Alliance spread. Queen Lirelai, now serving as the Alliance's political leader, studied the enemy formation through the main viewer. And the Voidseekers? 8,412 confirmed vessels, came the grim response from the sensor operator, ranging from scout ships to dreadnoughts the size of small moons. Marcus calculated the odds in his head and decided not to share the results. Even with their proven tactical advantages, the numerical disparity was overwhelming. But then again, humans had never been particularly good at accepting mathematical impossibilities. All fleet commanders report ready, Admiral Mitchell announced. Human squadrons are in position for the first wave assault. Zephyrian battle groups are standing by to provide heavy fire support. The strategy they had developed over months of joint planning was deceptively simple. Human ships would use their superior maneuverability and unpredictable tactics to create chaos in the enemy formation, while Zephyrian vessels provided the concentrated firepower needed to destroy major targets. It was a plan that required perfect coordination and mutual trust between species that had only recently rediscovered each other. Void Seeker fleet is beginning their approach, the sensor operator reported. They're maintaining the standard geometric formation we've seen in previous engagements. Marcus smiled grimly. The enemy's adherence to logical, efficient formations had been both their strength and their weakness throughout the war. It made them predictable to opponents who understood their thinking patterns. All ships, this is Admiral Mitchell. Sarah's voice echoed through the fleet communications. Remember what we've learned about these enemies. They think in patterns, they prefer efficient solutions, and they cannot adapt quickly to chaos. Our job is to give them more chaos than they can process. The human squadrons began their attack run, but instead of the coordinated assault waves that conventional military doctrine would suggest, they scattered across the battlefield in seemingly random patterns. To outside observers, it looked like complete confusion. The Void Seekers responded exactly as predicted, concentrating their fire on what appeared to be the largest threats while attempting to establish firing solutions for the scattered human vessels. But every time they achieved target lock, the human ships would execute impossible maneuvers that no sane pilot would attempt. Mining. Ship Prospector has just executed a barrel roll through an asteroid field, while firing mining charges at enemy destroyers, Karo, reported the communications officer with barely controlled amazement. Captain Jensen says the technique is called aggressive geological sampling. Queen Lirelai watched the tactical display with fascination. Your people have a remarkable gift for turning industrial equipment into weapons of war. Necessity is the mother of invention, Marcus replied. And humans have been very necessary for a very long time. The battle raged for hours, with neither side able to achieve a decisive advantage. The human ships inflicted significant damage on the enemy fleet through their unconventional tactics, but the Void Seekers' numerical superiority meant they could absorb losses that would cripple a smaller force. As the conflict reached its critical phase, something unexpected happened. The Void Seeker fleet began to withdraw from certain sectors, concentrating their forces into tighter formations. It was a logical response designed to maximize their firepower efficiency. "They're adapting," Admiral Mitchell observed, "pulling back into defensive clusters where our hit-and-run tactics will be less effective." "Then we change tactics again," Marcus said. "That's what humans do." Queen Lirelai activated the fleet-wide communication system. All vessels prepare for Operation Pandemonium. The plan they had held in reserve was perhaps the most audacious strategy ever attempted in space warfare. Instead of attacking the enemy fleet directly, they would target the space around them, using everything from mining charges to modified stellar manipulation equipment to create an artificial asteroid field. "Begin gravitational destabilization sequence," Admiral Mitchell ordered. Human mining ships, working in coordination with Zephyrian science vessels, began bombarding nearby asteroids and small planets with exotic energy weapons. The gravitational effects were carefully calculated to create a cascading series of impacts that would fill the battle zone with debris moving at relativistic velocities. The Void Seekers found themselves trapped in their defensive formations as chunks of rock and metal the size of buildings began careening through their ranks. Their logical response protocols were overwhelmed by the sheer number of impact vectors they needed to calculate. "Enemy fleet cohesion is breaking down," the sensor operator reported. "They're scattering to avoid the debris field." "Now we hit them," Sarah commanded. "All human squadrons execute Pattern Omega." The scattered human vessels suddenly converged on isolated enemy ships, using the debris field as cover for their approach. It was dangerous flying that required split-second timing and nerves of steel, but it was exactly the kind of challenge that human pilots had been training for their entire lives. Meanwhile, Zephyrian battle groups used their superior firepower to target the larger enemy vessels that were struggling to maneuver through the artificial asteroid field. The combination of human chaos and Zephyrian precision proved devastatingly effective. The tide of battle turned decisively when Captain Rodriguez of the Determination managed to ram her ship into the bridge section of a Void Seeker dreadnought. The impact triggered a cascade failure that destroyed 3 more enemy vessels and left a massive gap in their formation. "Rodriguez's sacrifice has opened a corridor directly to their command ship," Admiral Mitchell announced. "All squadrons converge on the enemy flagship." The final phase of the battle saw human and Zephyrian ships working in perfect coordination, with human vessels creating diversions and openings that allowed the Zephyrian heavy cruisers to deliver killing blows. When the enemy command ship finally exploded, the remaining Void Seeker vessels lost coordination and began retreating toward the edge of the system. "Pursuit squadrons, maintain contact but do not engage," Queen Lirelai ordered. "Let them carry word of this defeat back to their main fleet." As the immediate danger passed, Marcus found himself looking around the bridge at the mixed crew of humans and Zephyrians who had fought side by side. The alliance that had begun with a chance encounter on a trading station had evolved into something that neither species could have achieved alone. "Damage reports are coming in," Admiral Mitchell announced. "We lost 43 human vessels and 16 Zephyrian ships. Casualties are significant but far lower than projected." Queen Lirelai nodded solemnly. "Their sacrifice ensured that both our species will survive to see tomorrow. The galaxy owes them a debt that can never be fully repaid." "What now?" Marcus asked. "The Void Seekers will be back and they'll have adapted to our tactics." "Then we'll adapt faster," Sarah replied with a slight smile. "It's what humans do best." "And we will face them together," Queen Lirelai added. "Human creativity and Zephyrian resources united in common cause. The galaxy has not seen the last of the Void Seekers, but it has seen the birth of something new, an alliance that transcends species boundaries." Marcus looked out at the stars, knowing that somewhere among them were the scattered human colonies that had chosen to remain hidden, but after today's victory, he suspected more of them would choose to emerge from the shadows. Humanity's return to galactic civilization was no longer a rumor or a legend. It was a reality that would reshape the galaxy. The war against the Void Seekers was far from over, but for the first time in centuries the forces of civilization had hope, and sometimes, hope was the most powerful weapon of all. As the combined fleet began the journey home, Marcus reflected on the strange path that had brought him to this moment. A simple trading mission had led to first contact with alien royalty, which had sparked an alliance that saved both species from extinction. He smiled, thinking about what his grandmother would have said about humans teaming up with aliens to fight in a galactic war. She probably would have told him to make sure he got a good price for whatever he was trading. Some things, Marcus decided, never changed. And maybe that was exactly what the galaxy needed.